So at this point, I would like to welcome those who are just joining us to this Black mothering conversation with the amazing Dr. Jacqui Getfield. And we are just so proud that Dr. Jacqui Getfield is joining us in the wake of her very recent successful defense of her dissertation. Jacqui Getfield is a faithful member of the Black Anglicans of Canada, and we're so grateful that she's here with us this evening. We're happy for this opportunity to celebrate her, and we look forward to hearing her speak. So her biography. Jacqui Getfield is the loving mother and fierce advocate of two school-aged children. Jacqui Getfield conducts research and writes articles about equity, educational policy, family engagement, motherhood, race, racism, and disability and ableism. She has taught at Seneca College and Centennial College and lectured at the Toronto Metropolitan University, formerly Ryerson University. Most recently, she has been the featured speaker for Toronto Metropolitan University, formerly Ryerson, and Grinnell College in the USA. Before completing her doctoral studies, she taught at Seneca and Centennial, as I've mentioned, and lectured at the then Ryerson University. For over 20 years, Jacqui has worked as a public relations practitioner, grant writer, website content writer, and editor of print and online content in several organizations across industries. For over 10 years, she has been the principal of Say It Right Communications, where she assists leaders of companies and nonprofit charitable organizations, including faith organizations. She writes reports and grant applications, and she develops corporate communication materials, including full-length speeches. Jacqui gives back to her community in many ways. She is a current board member of the Ontario Alliance of Black School Educators, also known as ONABSE, and she has served as chair of the Family Engagement Council, as well as a member of York Region District School Board's Parent, Family, and Community Engagement Advisory Committee. Please welcome Dr. Jacqui Getfield.
Thank you, everybody. Can everybody hear me? Can I just have a thumbs up? Oh, look at that. So wonderful thumbs up. All right, I thank the organizers for all the work that has been put into this this event. I thank you so very much for inviting me to speak on my most favorite topic. My two boys are in the audience, and so I'm feeling very, very encouraged, because I think it's important for them to hear me speak and to hear me speak about what I am passionate about. I just want to thank the organization for the mission and the work that it's doing within the Anglican Church. There is a lot to be done. There is a lot to be done on behalf of Black people generally, but on behalf of Black kids, our future. And so I am just excited now that I'm finished with my PhD to be able to slowly lift my hand and start the work that needs to get done in the many communities to which I belong. So on that note, I will get started. If you will just let me, I don't have anything to share, so I'm not going to share a screen. And I cannot, let me just tell everybody from now, I'm not going to be looking at the chat because I can't multitask. It's something I can't do. I'm so sorry. So let me begin by saying that I have been asked, why would someone spend so many years studying Black mothers, Black mothering, Black motherhood? What is so different about mothering between races anyway? Questions like, don't we all bleed the same red blood, give birth in much the same way biologically? And as mothers, regardless of race, don't we have the same challenges with our children as they grow and develop? And my response to all those questions is, Have you looked at the statistical data? Look, and you'll find the answers to why, despite the fact that we all bleed red, why is the rate of Black maternal mortality so high? Why Black women die in childbirth more than other women in North America? Why Black and Indigenous students are disproportionately removed from school, from the special, and why they are placed in the special needs classroom much more than other races. So there are many questions, there are many reasons why the Black mother acts the way she does. And looking at it through a critical lens, I implore all of you to join me as I engage in a deeper analysis of our social institutions so that we can better respond to issues in our society and engage in dialogue that will produce change for Black students and Black families. And let me just say it clearly, race matters and Blackness matters as well. So allow me to begin with a 1984 quote from Audre Lorde. And Audre said, open quote, "Black women and our children know the fabric of our lives. We know that the fabric of our lives is stitched with violence and with hatred, and that there is no rest. We will not deal with it only on the picket lines or in the dark midnight alleys or in the places where we dare to verbalize our resistance. For us, increasingly, violence weaves through the daily tissues of our living, in the supermarket, in the classroom, in the elevator, in the clinic, and the schoolyard. From the plumber, the baker, the saleswoman, the bus driver, the bank teller, the waitress who does not serve us. Some problems we share as women, and some we do not. You fear that your children will grow up to join the patriarchy and testify against you. We fear our children will be dragged from a car and shot down in the street, and you will turn your backs upon the reasons they are dying. So the concept and practice of Black mothering signal action and identity portraits that are unique to the Black lived experiences. And so it is that I chose to begin this talk with an excerpt from Audre Lorde's 1984 book entitled Sister Outsider. And I continue just a little bit more verbatim. Lorde said, open quote, "Unless one lives and loves in the trenches, it is difficult to remember that the war against dehumanization is ceaseless." What do we mean by that? The war against dehumanization is ceaseless. Black mothering responds to how Black children are treated or disregarded in churches, in our schools, and in our communities. Black mothers therefore respond to educators, Sunday school teachers, and persons in the community in ways that we believe are in the best interest of our children. Black mothers must address this dehumanization. Black mothers must continually wage war against the dehumanization of Black students and Black families. Let me be clear. The dehumanization of Black people and Black disabled people is not a recent phenomenon. Of course, the obvious period of sustained dehumanization was the enslavement and the related systemic murder of Black people who were deemed to be property of white slave-owning class. Debunked theories of eugenics held that Black people were degenerates, inept, and biologically unable to achieve higher levels of thinking. And Black people were certainly not intelligent in comparison to white people. The period of eugenics extended from about the late 1800s to about the mid-1920s to 1930s. This kind of thinking affected groups of people, or the groups of people who would have been admitted into Canada, admitted into North America, and which groups of people were disregarded, were excluded. Some 100 years later, 1 century later, arguably 3 to 4 generations later, there are still generations of people and their descendants who bought into these theories and have maintained and sustained myths and related stereotypes. And so they have tied Blackness to disability and vice versa. This kind of thinking threads throughout the various social institutions in our society, including our churches and our schools. Do any of you present here tonight believe that colonization is a thing of the past? Or can you still see vestiges of colonialism in our society today, almost 2 centuries after emancipation? Can you see it? If you cannot make the link, allow me to ask you to think about the fact that Black communities have been asking for more Black content in education and schooling and schools so that Black kids can see themselves in the curriculum. Think about the call for Black students to be treated equitably in the school system so they too can achieve and aspire to professional occupations. Think about the call for district school boards to employ more racialized educators. Think about how Indigenous peoples have been treated, how their lands have been appropriated, how they have been stripped of their culture for centuries. Think about the murder of the children and the burial in unmarked graves. Think about the fact that they have had to go as far as to Rome to speak with the Pope, to ask the Pope to attend to this matter. And think about the fact that after all these years, there is some traction. There's beginning to be some traction. So some people like to refer to these present times as post-colonial or post-racial. They think that, race is not an issue anymore. And certainly colonialism is, centuries away in our past. But I want to ask, does this mean that we have decolonized our thinking? So let me bring it home to you, and I'm going to be very personal. About 3 years ago, in the height of the summer at summer camp, one of the Sunday school teachers stopped me. I'd gone to pick up my kids, and looking into my face, I was smiling, I was approaching her, she was approaching me. I'm going to go pick up my kids. I'm happy to see them. After all, the sun hot outside, it was summer. I was feeling good. And she said to me, "Is it hot enough for you?" And before I could respond, she followed it up with, "I understand why you people from the islands don't do much work down there. It is impossible to work when it is this hot. I can't even think." And then she paused, expecting empathy and understanding from me. After all, she was attempting to bond with me. I looked at her flushed red face. I noted that she was sweating profusely, and I heard myself telling her that she should probably go drink some water and go wash her face with very cold water. And she should keep a damp cloth with the cold water, maybe some ice handy. I myself was experiencing cognitive dissonance. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And I really thought this woman wasn't thinking straight. That was one experience. Another time, I'm in church. It's a white dominant church. The congregation is mostly white and older persons. And it's in a very affluent neighborhood. And so I'm always on alert for older white people who may not yet have fully embraced the fact that Black people are legally entitled to be treated equally. And I'm on alert because not only do I intend to be treated equally, but I want my children to be treated equitably. So I'll give you one more story. So my 2 children were they sometimes rock when they're seated. And just so you know, this is related to their impairment. So one Sunday, they and their peers were to perform in church. And so their teachers told them to sit up front in the first two pews. I remember it was intercessory prayers. Prayers are going on. And this older white lady decided to tell my kids to stop rocking. Of course, they ignored her because I've taught them to do that. Ignore people. Ignore people who are talking to you who you don't know because they're strange people. And don't talk to strangers. And really ignore them if they try to tell you to stop rocking. So this woman persisted. I gave her a look of warning. She opened her mouth a third time. And I turned to her and I told her to close her eyes, pray to her God, and leave my children alone. Now, I want all of you to ask yourselves and to think this through. What could possibly have been happening? What could have possessed this older white woman to have transcended boundaries on not one, but 3 occasions in the space of as many minutes? What was going on? Isn't there supposed to be some kind of unspoken rule that people do not reprimand other people's children? And you certainly don't do that when the children's parents are present. What could it be? Why would she do this? But I put it to you, this disregard for Black parents is nothing new. Think about this, and I'm going to take you way back. On the one hand, Black mothers have rocked the proverbial cradle for centuries. Think about it. Enslaved Black women nursed, meaning that they gave breast milk from their own breasts to babies, and they looked after children in the master's house. Simultaneously, Black mothers were expected to nurse their own children and their mistresses' white children. So delicate were some of the white wives of slave owners that the enslaved Black women and Black mothers had to comfort their masters' wives. And then these same enslaved Black women and Black mothers were sometimes raped by the Black masters themselves. Through the relations, though the relations were intimate, as it were, the enslaved female bodies were exploited continually, and they were certainly not respected as mothers. For some reason, to this very day, Black women are thought to be incapable of mothering their own children. To this day, as during colonialism, Black women are under intense surveillance, yet made to feel invisible, and also treated with total disregard. Hence, Black women, Black children, Black men, Black people are dehumanized. But not all Black mothers experience motherhood in this way. There is no one story. So I don't want to generalize. I'm not generalizing, and I'm certainly not essentializing. I can hear some of you saying, but Jackie, there are different kinds of mothers out there. And I agree. Black mothers are diverse. But regardless of their own class and privilege, their experiences are influenced by the more powerful educator. Within the last 3 weeks or so, I have had reason to talk with a Black medical doctor who is also a mother of 2 children. And she was lamenting that despite the fact that she pays a considerable amount in private school tuition, she has to be advocating and fighting educators to give her children full access to an education. She kept saying, but I'm paying a whole lot of money, Jack. And I kept telling her what I've heard about Black mothers and what I've researched, what I have learned, what my studies have said to me, but she just couldn't, it just couldn't come together that she's paying this much money, but she's having the same sort of problems. Until I said to her, why do you think that is? And she laughed. Not in a funny kind of way, but exasperated. So think of another Black mother that I know, who was so done with the public school system in Ontario that she herself enrolled her child in a private school. But then when she had the opportunity to send her child abroad to escape the Ontario school system altogether, imagine this mother allowed her child to travel from Ontario, Canada, child was around maybe 14, 15 years old at the time, to some area in France. And I don't mean Paris. I meant after you got to the city, you had to go to some rural area or some little town. This mother allowed her child to do this, go to France by himself in a pandemic. Now, why would that be? Think about these things. What is it about the school system here in Canada that would engender or encourage a mother to do this if she could afford to do it and if the child had the capability to do it? I want to put it to you that in my study, I interviewed 6 mothers who had varying yet similar experiences in the Ontario public school system. So my work is entitled Prescriptive Partnerships, Black Mothers of Disabled Children and Educators in Ontario's Public School System. So mine is an exploratory study. So it doesn't come to conclusions that say, thou must do this. It explores the phenomenon. It explores the idea of Black mothers as agents on behalf of their children. The study claps back against established theories and mainstream understandings of family engagement, mainstream understandings of what it means to engage a home, parents, to engage with school, educators. So my dissertation departs from the normal or the normalized portrayal of Black mothers that says that Black mothers are not interested in their work. My work, my study demonstrates that Black mothers are very interested, they're engaged, and they're involved in their children's schooling and education. So I examined the experiences of 7 Black mothers. I am one of the 7. So it is kind of a, autoethnography, as it were. I looked at how these Black mothers define their own roles as agents. My work aimed to reveal, therefore, the Black mothers' level of engagement with educators, and it analyzed 2 education policies, the family engagement policy and the special education policy. So my dissertation shed light on home-school relations. Specific emphasis, though, was on the interlocking oppressions of race, class, gender, and disability. So what did I ask? I asked, how do Black mothers as agents on behalf of their school-age children experience disengagement within the special education environment of the elementary public school system? I asked as well, how do race and racism influence how Black mothers engage with schools, or how Black mothers are disengaged by educators and administrators in the education and schooling of Black students? So I wanted to reveal a kind of triad, if you will. So at the top is the Black mother. To one end of the triangle would be the Black students. And then at the other end would be the educators who influence and determine the educational experience of Black students. So let me just put it out there. The scholarly literature and the professional literature says that Black parents are undereducated, overworked, ill-equipped, and for these reasons are disengaged, disinterested in their children's education, and so they are uncaring. Black parents, and by extension, Black mothers, are said to be hard to reach. And as a result, Black mothers are implicated and sometimes blamed in the underachievement of Black students. But these notions of Black mother disengagement don't align with my own lived experiences or the lived experiences of the Black mothers that I know. So I thought to myself, let's investigate it. Let's investigate the levels and intensity of engagement of Black mothers. So I started this work, the interviews, I think in summer of 2019. And I just wanted to have some kind of a background. I wanted to see, how did we get to this place? And so I did a brief, it wasn't long, it wasn't a lot. I really didn't go deep into the history, but I did do some historical research. to look at what schooling was like for Black students back in the 1850s, 1840s, round about the time of Egerton Ryerson, for whom Ryerson was named, and of course, why they had to change the name to Toronto Metropolitan University. Maybe in the last 2 weeks or so, it was announced that that was a new name for Ryerson. And this, at the time, Ryerson was a superintendent of schools. And what was happening was that Black parents could not get their children registered in school because white parents decided that they did not want Black parents in school, Black children in the same school. And some person said, okay, if they're gonna come into the same school, they have to sit in the back of the school, they have to be segregated. They did not want the negative effects of Black children to rub off on the white children. And if you want to look further into that work, Natasha Henry, who I think spoke at one of the Black events in the summer of 2020, she's a wonderful source, and another person named McLaren. It's quite interesting to read upon the history. But the interesting thing to note as well is that very little has changed regarding the power of whiteness in education and schooling today. Black children and their families continue to be excluded and disregarded by classroom teachers. And this was the case when legislation was passed back in the 1850s to ensure that Black children should be included in formal education across Canada, as it is today. So nothing much has changed. So how much more time do I have?
You may have up to 10 more minutes.
Thank you. Give me a 5-minute warning when I'm close to the end. So what I want to talk about a little bit about whiteness. Whiteness relates to the structures upon which institutions like education and religion are built and sustained. Whiteness ensures that some groups of people are included and regarded, and by extension, whiteness ensures that some people are excluded and disregarded. Whiteness, therefore, as critical race theorists like to say, whiteness is property. Whiteness is something that is owned, and it cannot be owned. It is not owned by all. It is not owned by one group of persons, and that group of persons are usually the rulers in our society, persons who design the laws, design and give direction to what we will do as a people and what we won't do. Society's rules, or behaviors, or attitudes, or values. That's the group that is at the forefront of that. And the rest of us, if we try to be too upfront with who we are, especially if who we are is different from the norm, then we are called deviant. So schools were not built for Black students. Schools were built for white students. The history of the education of Black people in Ontario reveal that Black parents have had to continually fight for centuries to have their children in school and to have their children being treated fairly, equitably, and being regarded as students in school. So in other words, provision is not necessarily made for Black students. And that is why we have to fight so much, especially when Black students are also disabled students. So where are we now? We are at a point where Black students are still being denied access to an education. They're still being continually excluded from classrooms on the grounds of behaviors. They're still being de-streamed. They're still being placed in special education environments in disproportionate numbers. They're still being disciplined and expelled in large numbers. In fact, you know, you hear, oh, boys will be boys. But that's not for all boys. That's not for Black boys. Black boys are treated as adults in the criminal justice system, and they're regarded as being scary, as being monsters, generally speaking. You hear that, you know, we saw a Black male enter and we got scared. So I invite all of you to think carefully about the work that whiteness does, even though nobody wants to talk about white supremacy. They don't like to hear about whiteness, and they certainly don't want to hear about racism within our social institutions and our medical healthcare spaces, that sort of thing. So where does that leave us? Well, the flip side is today's parents and today's Black Canadian mothers in particular are products of generation upon generation of prescribed relations organized within these white social relations, right? And these relations are dictated by white educators, restrained and constrained by white policy analysts, and by white government officials. No, there could be some Black people in there, but again, whiteness is property. Whiteness is something that can be attained. You can work towards it. You can achieve what they call the accoutrement of power, the tools of power, the vehicles of power, regardless of your skin color. We talk about class and privilege. Those are the things that enable you to move into positions where you can, if you'd like, acquire whiteness, the ways and beings of the rulers in our society, as it were. The participants in my study knew that they were Black in a white society. And so this understanding of whiteness is critically important to the study of Black mothers' agency on behalf of Black children in a white educational space. The policy themselves don't talk about racism, generally for many reasons, including the fear of the unknown, the fear of a clash between parents knowing and doing and what is expected by the system of education, and the fear of literally running out of time, so you don't have enough time to teach the curriculum. There are many educators, including Black educators, who do not value the Black family's engagement within the school system. And they certainly don't value the Black engagement practices that may include child development activities in the home aimed at spirit building and emotional upliftment. So, of course, I have used critical race theory to help me to understand the distribution and enactment of power within homeschool relations. So I have unpacked concepts like counter narratives or stories told by non-white, by racialized persons, by Black persons. These are called counter narratives because they go against hegemony. They go against the normalized way of doing things. Normally, you don't hear the voices of Black parents and Black mothers. Normally, you hear the voices of educators, and not even Black educators. You hear the voices, you hear research is normally done from the perspective of white educators. And so this is why when you talk about critical race theory, you talk about bringing to the foreground the voices of Black mothers, Black students, Black fathers, Black parents, Black educators. So that is the counterpart. It's a disruption of what is normalized. Other concepts that I talked about in my work, color blindness, the fact that, I don't see color. The fact that policies, people say I don't see color, and so they're not racist. But what does that really mean? If you're not seeing color, then you're not seeing the Black student in front of you. You're not seeing the issues that are the barriers that they are faced with. You're definitely not understanding whiteness. And I use Kimberly Crenshaw's intersectional framework to understand how race, disability, and other sites of oppression come together to affect the lives of Black students and the relations that exist between home and school. So just in a nutshell, and it's much more to it than that, but critical race theory says that racism is natural in our society. It is a common, everyday experience of racialized people. So that was a theory that I used. And I talked to, like I said, 6 Black mothers. We had in-depth, semi-structured interviews that lasted about 2 hours each, give or take. These Black mothers included low income and middle income. These Black mothers were from low income, middle income backgrounds. One was Canadian born, 2 immigrated to Canada between 6 and 18 years old, and 4 came to Canada as adults. So we were all schooled in Jamaica. So in my work, I approach the work from the point of view of what you call an insider-outsider research participant. What does this mean? I am an insider because I am one of the Black mothers, racialized Black mothers, and I am an agent on behalf of disabled children. I have been gendered and classed and racialized in our Ontarian society. Like the other mothers, as I mentioned, I'm an immigrant from the global South, living with the prejudicial treatment that has been afforded to people like me. But I'm an outsider. I'm an outsider because I am the daughter of a mother who had 40 odd years in the classroom in Jamaica. And some of those years were spent as a coordinator or an administrator, not a principal, but like a coordinator of the grade. So she was in charge of a few teachers, and definitely in charge of helping the newer teachers to be acclimatized. So that was my mother's role. How was I in terms of that, an outsider? Well, not many Black mothers have that inside knowledge of what school is. So that's why you call me an outsider. I'm outside of the cadre or the group of Black mothers that I interviewed. I'm outside of them because I heard my mother talk about, union matters, stuff that teachers were concerned with in terms of what the government was doing or not doing, the government of the day was doing or not doing. I heard my mother talk about students, not necessarily their names, but the impact that she was having or not having, discussing how can she better approach teaching certain things and discussing strategies with teachers, her peers. Lots of stuff happened back in the day that I was exposed to. So I am not a stranger to this whole area of education, as it were, the career, the professionalism of education. So in my work, I interviewed, like I said, there were about 6 mothers, and they had certain things to say about school and schooling and educators. One mother said, teachers are not taking me seriously. Teachers had no time. They had a bad attitude. Principals were not taking things seriously. The problem is systemic. There should be a way to make teachers accountable. Another parent, when I asked her about the individual education plan, said, how do you feel about the IEP, the development of your child's IEP? And she says, total bullshit. To my understanding, a parent cannot just request an IEP, even if she has documentation to back up this request from doctors. The teachers or principal must themselves see a need. And even if they get documentary evidence from a health professional, the school will not do anything if they do not believe the child has a problem. Another mother was saying, I don't see where my input has influenced the content that I receive when I get the actual IEP. For example, I don't see his strengths reflected in the IEP. His weaknesses are there. So what I realized from my work is that the Black mothers, and I say all 7 of us, were continually trying to engage educators whom they believe were critical to their children's academic success. They were trying to get access to classwork. They're trying to get access to assignments, to understand what's coming on the tests. They were trying to just get information from the educators that will help them to assist their children to understand what is happening so that they themselves can assist their children at home. But they had the hardest time. And is it interesting that they have such a hard time getting this information and getting cooperation and to collaborate with educators, considering that the Ministry of Education's parent engagement policy talks about parents being partners. So we're back again to power. Who has the power? Who has the power to exclude Black mothers, even though Black mothers really have demonstrated that they want to be a part, they want to be team members, they want to be thought of as team members. Giselle, one of the participants, says, they have in-school support team meetings, but I was told that I am not allowed to attend these meetings. They said that they will update me, but I have never gotten any information since. So, as I mentioned, not all the Black mothers are at in the same income bracket, as it were. It's a diverse group. Some were middle class and they were able to use their cultural and social capital. They were able to use, what they knew. They were able to use their network to get resources and services for their children. Some of the mothers continue to resist, and they were able to speak out and escalate matters beyond the principal team in their local school to superintendents and directors at the district school board level. So, and there was one parent who actually worked in the system. And so she says she was able to navigate the system and have a better understanding intrinsically of what was available to her, which she explained gave her an added advantage because most parents don't have that access. So in the interest of time, I won't go through the actual policies, but just to say that the policies themselves sustain the status quo because they suggest rather than mandate administrators to perform tasks that will lead to greater homeschool and more efficient homeschool relations. The policies leave the enactment and implementation up to the discretion of educators. So this study analyzed the two policies that I mentioned, but by using the critical policy analysis, I was able to show that there is a gap between the real power that Black mothers possess and the ideal power that is said to be bestowed to Black mothers and to all parents by these policies. The study revealed that Black mothers were unaware of the policies, but even more than that, Black mothers really didn't care. They did not care about the policies. They didn't even care to read them because Black mothers were living out their own understanding of engagement as they care and facilitate the education of their disabled children in special education environments. So in the interest of time, I'll shut it down here. And then just one last thing to say that the study demonstrated that some Black mothers join with parenting groups in the Black community. They form alliances with their immediate peers, peer mothers, and they, in so doing, they increase their own cultural and social capital, and they augment their knowledge base and their parent advocate practices in this way, through communities and through engagement with peer mothers. And by extension, these Black mothers contribute to the well-being, not only of their own children, but other people's children within the Black community. I leave it there for now. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jacqui Getfield, for these extraordinary remarks. Thank you for your research, which I'm sure is groundbreaking and will be life-changing for many people who make use of it. And thank you for making yourself available this evening. So we are going to go to the Q&A now. There are a couple of ways in which you can participate in the Q&A. You can enter your questions in the chat, and I do see that there are some comments there already, which I will read out. But you may use that mechanism, Or you may certainly use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen and wait to be recognized so that you can unmute and ask your question orally if you prefer. So let's see what's in the chat to get us started. And I have a couple of questions too, I should mention. Celia is saying, interesting in terms of how Black mothers engage in the school system. I had to put the systemic issues that I expect my sons to face front and center, and warned the school principal and daycare manager that I would be on guard and on the lookout for any hint of it and call everyone out for it. We have to be preemptive and therefore are perceived to be suspicious and aggressive. Very interesting and true. Even our own kids sometimes don't understand how we approach an issue with a sledgehammer rather than a scalpel. Dr. Getfield, do you have a response or some feedback about that comment?
I have nothing to say to Celia. Celia and I went to school at Vast Prep when we were, let us say, when our eyes were at our knees. That's how long I've known Celia. So I am not surprised that she and I are thinking the same way and we're using the same tools, the sledgehammer. Because when you come up on a system like this, it doesn't make any sense to put and powder and pamper. You have to deal with it with a sledgehammer. You have to tell them up front what you're going to do and that you have them under surveillance as much as they have you under surveillance. That's all I have to say.
Julia further adds, now that you mention it, I did join the parent council. I was the only Black mother there and I was frozen out. In the meetings, they were cordial, and when the meeting ended, so did the cordiality. In the supermarket or other places within the neighborhood, I was invisible to those same persons I sat in the room with. Is that a common experience among the Black mothers that you interviewed?
Well, Celia would have done this, and Celia, correct me if I'm wrong, you would have done this because your boys are late teens, early 20s now. So the mothers that I interviewed, like I said, it was in about summer of 2019. They don't even go to local school councils anymore. I mean, it was a point I was trying to make in a talk that I gave on Monday, that sometimes it's a waste of your time. It is a waste of time in ways, especially if you have children who need the extra help at home. For you to go on, especially when you had to go to school, bathe, put on clothes, travel to the school, spend an hour and a half in meetings, then travel back home. By the time you're done, the kids gone to bed. That could be time that you spend with your children because you don't get much out of school council if you are the only lone Black voice. People vote in this system, we vote democratically. And so therefore, what are the interests of the majority of the parents on local council, the school council? They're not necessarily the interests of Black parents. When you have a child who's being bullied or undergoing certain things, even from sometimes teachers, not just even peers, even the kids' peers, from teachers themselves. You don't have buy-in because it doesn't happen to everybody. It's happening to your own kids. And so therefore, when they make decisions, the decision-making table, yes, you are there. But are you there and do you have buy-in from the other parents? And I put it to you because I've been at the subcommittee level at the district school board level. And it's almost sometimes a waste of your time because this system works by numbers. You have to have numbers. You have to have a lot of you. One hand can't clap. One finger can't snap. You need at least two to snap and you need two to clap. So when you're there alone as a one-off person, no, I don't think it works. And I think we need more, but at the same time, again, when you have other things to do, our realities are different. Some of us have the realities of the Black family, especially the Black, and I'm gonna say this, especially from the Black family from Jamaica. And you can look up You can go and Google it. And I'm not speaking negatively about Jamaica. I'm just saying the Black family in Jamaica is composed in a different way. And in Canada, a majority, specifically Ontario, a majority of the Black population is Jamaican. We have, at a minimum, about 250 to 300,000 Jamaicans who are, let us just say, well, that's who are on census, who we count, right? Who are documented. And you'll find that if Jamaica's family composition is skewed a certain way, then you'll find that that happens here as well. Is there an understanding of that kind of family dynamic? At the local school council meetings? No. So the expectations as to what parents should do and can be, and when they can do it and should do it, is different from the reality of the typical Jamaican Black family. And of course, there's nothing really typical, I shouldn't say that word, because you do have different kinds of Black families, even from Jamaica itself. However, again, if you look at the numbers, and if you did the census and what the data coming out of Jamaica, you'll understand that unless you understand who exactly the Black mothers are and what they have to contend with within a family structure, then it's like two different conversations happening completely, and expectations are not met.
Very interesting. I will just add on to that answer before I go to the next question. So here in Windsor, Ontario, I sit on the Anti-Black Racism Advisory Committee of our local English Public School Board. And the school board authorities, the administration team, often throws out at us, well, if you're interested, get involved in the parent councils, run for school trustee, like all of that stuff. We have to keep explaining to them the barriers that exist to that, and also the extreme emotional labor, the extremely fatiguing and draining nature of being the lone voice in the room, just as you've said, and how people are shying away from that, recognizing that their efforts aren't really bearing fruit in that way. So it truly does take a village to work together on these things, and not just individual Black parents or family members. Cheryl Duffus has said a couple of things that I think are really key. The conclusion that our Black students are not dropping out of school, but in fact that they are pushed out, is really something important to keep in mind. She also refers to the danger of the single story, that very famous TED Talk and all of the conversations thereabout. But she also asks, what can educators do to at least attempt to correct for social location influence on teaching and learning? What are your thoughts? What can educators do to at least attempt to correct for social location influence on teaching and learning?
Number one, educators have to come off their high horses and they have to talk to the parents, talk to mothers, get to know the child, get to know the student. Create an environment where students are not, Black students don't feel like they are guests in their own school. Create an environment where Black parents feel welcome. What they have to contribute is also, important. Let them feel like there's a reason for them to come back into the school and for them to remain engaged. No matter how they're busy, they will come back if they're feeling welcome. So that's the first thing I think. I mean, beyond social location, it doesn't matter your class or your privilege or anything or your lack thereof. If you feel welcome, you'll be engaged. You'll be a part of it. You will want to come back. We're all social beings. For me, that's the first step. Start treating Black parents, Black students as human beings. Treat them equally. And if they have disability and impairments, treat them equitably.
Not that we would ask you to be a spokesperson for an organization at this time, but how important is it for parents or family members of Black children to get involved in wider networks like Parents of Black Children, and how can they be of assistance?
It's always important to get involved in community organizations, always. Parent of Black children is one of them. There are many across, but they are the most vocal now. They're in the news. They're, you know, they have a good thing going. They have a good structure. They have, it's not just a one man in the basement kind of operation, it seems. So for that reason, I believe that it's important, and it's important to support community organizations as well. So in fact, I support everything that they do, and I am always sending out information on behalf of parents of Black children. So I say, if you're in Windsor, if you're in Halton, any district school board that you're in, and you have an organization, I say support it. Again, one hand can't clap and one finger can't snap. So get involved and let the Black voice be stronger. Parents of Black children doing phenomenal work. They are all over Ontario, it seems. Well, I should say the GTA. So, you know, and they're in the news a lot, and they're on Twitter a lot, and social media a lot, and the service navigators are system navigators are doing well, you know. So yeah, I think people should get involved and really make an effort to make their voices be heard. And if you have a choice to go to Parents of Black children meetings, which are quarterly, I believe, or you're gonna go to local school council, I would suggest that you go to Parents of Black children meetings, because there's so many workshops, you know, there's a lot going on there. So I would, if you only have certain amount of time and you want to get involved in one thing, I would say start there.
And I just want to add, they've been helpful to some parents and family members in Essex County and Waterloo region as well. So it's not just GTA. Okay, I want to make sure that those of you who are on this Zoom have an opportunity to ask questions, but I'm going to ask a couple of others until I see someone put up their hand or enter something different in the chat. So we don't want to make this Ontario-centric, because we do have people here from other jurisdictions and from other dioceses, such as the Diocese of British Columbia. But here in Ontario, we have a provincial election coming up on June 2nd. And we have municipal elections coming up in October. So when candidates appear on our verandas or at our doors, what are the kinds of things we should be asking them about, whether they are running for provincial office or seeking to be a school board trustee? In your opinion?
I am so not a politician. However, there's some hot topics and hot button topics, and I don't want to touch them, but a lot has to do with the pandemic and with, you know, virtual school versus in school. There's politics happening, I believe, with regard to who exactly are the parents. What is the data telling us about who are mostly the students who were at home, even when you had a chance to go back into school? Who were the ones who benefited from being at home, virtual school? Because if you follow the media will pretend as though, or have you believe that it is best for all students to be in school all the time. And some parents, particularly that I, you know, talk with, interact with, they tell you they have never seen their children do as well as when they are at home. Now the question is, what is happening? And after you figure out what is happening, why were they doing better at home? Why aren't they, you know, why are they feeling more comfortable at home? What is at school that's making the kids uncomfortable? And which kids are uncomfortable at school? Which kids are being bullied, not only by their peers, but by their teachers? Which kids are being spoken of in ways that make them feel less than human? What's going on in the schools? No, that's not something to talk to campaigners about. But when you go to vote, the question is, who do you vote for? Which political party is saying what that sounds reasonable to you. So I don't want to get into partisan politics, except to say that each family has to look into what everybody is talking about. Most parties are talking about return to normal. What normal? What was the normal that was so great for Black students? Who is willing to make changes? Is this changes just about the vocal white parent who is, you know, has placards and up and down, walking up and down the streets in Queens, whatever the name is down there, the Queen's Park. I don't know what to say, except for me, this entire school system needs to be disrupted. It needs to be broken down. It needs to be demolished and start again. I don't see any new normal that I would want my children to return to. My children have to return to school at some point? Yes. Do they need social interaction? Yes. But it's more than just that. Because again, there were kids who were doing very well during the pandemic. They did very well in school. They did very well under the watchful eye of their parents. And the teachers did very well because the teachers were under surveillance. And they themselves had to, you know, sit up for certain. My children's teachers had more conversations with me during the pandemic than we did outside of the pandemic, because I could see what they were doing and what they couldn't doing, including when some, you know, language teacher who didn't know what a verb was, a sentence. And in many ways, you know, you had a chance as a parent, if you were home and you were privileged to be home, especially in the first year, the first year in 2020, and especially when virtual school became a reality in September of 2020 through to the end of the 2020-2021 year. If you were privileged to be home, you had a front row seat. And I can tell you, as a student of OISE, where teachers are trained, they bemoan the fact that they were under such surveillance. They felt under surveillance. And I kept on saying, but that is how Black students and Black families feel all the time. So what? And then they said I was gaslighting. But that's my thing. I don't get involved in politics, but each family has to look into what is working for them, what wasn't working for them, and make a decision as to if they want, you know, Uncle Dougie to stay in, or they want other people to come in, and for what reasons. It can't just, I know it can't just be about education. It has to be all the other things that are affecting families.
Amy has written something really significant in the chat. I am still processing what you have said. I have never felt so heard. I am living through this in the BC school system. I try to smile and pretend it isn't happening for my daughter's sake, though it is so hard to always hear the negative and never the positive. I will have more questions in time, but for now I am so grateful for your words. I feel less isolated or crazy hearing this. Wow. I want to thank you for offering, again, this expertise and this, you know, really courageous, but also very welcoming and hospitable conversation in a way that's so accessible, so that those of us going through these things aren't feeling so alone. And that really brings me to my next question. Oh, I do want to mention the Reverend Jacqueline Daly has placed the Parents of Black Children URL in the chat for anyone who would like to look into that. So this brings me to my next question. I mean, I know when Funke Aladejabi was working on her dissertation work on Black women teachers in Canadian systems, that was so groundbreaking. And then she published her book, Schooling the System, which made it so much more accessible to a lot more people. So my question for you, no pressure, is when are you turning this into a book?
That's interesting. One success as an academic is largely helped or hindered by the topic, number one, but also by the support that you have from your organization, your school. Not many people have an interest in Black parents, and particular Black mothers. I must tell you straight up. Funke's advantage is history. It's a history department. So in fact, I have her book. It was one of the books that I really, really leaned on heavily when it came to the historical piece as well. But yeah, I must tell you straight up, and the approach to mothering is so normalized that Black mothering is not a thing. And Black mothering within educational spaces, it is almost unheard of. My work is unique, very unique in in Ontario, broadly speaking, but really unique across Canada. And so, as I started off at the beginning, why Black mothering? Why do we have to talk about race and mothering? Because mothering is itself is not a sexy topic. Mothering has never been a sexy topic because within the umbrella of feminist theories, mothering is not a thing. Mothering is said to be a part of patriarchy, a part of the way of keeping things the same way, keeping women pregnant and having children. So mothering is not an exciting topic. In fact, so all of that means that the support, if you don't have support, I'm not saying it can't happen because I'm a believer. And under the blood of Jesus, if it has to be done and it will be done, and if it's God's will, it will be done. So I'm not saying it won't happen. What I'm saying is, in the natural, if you look at the natural way of things, it is not something that is exciting, that is sexy, that is attractive for many people. People are okay for Black kids to continue to be disregarded. They really are. If you think about it, if after all what they call school reform and education reform, after decades upon decades of it in the States as well as here, Black students are still in the same position or sometimes even in a worse position. Why is that? I don't know if it's people are being really intentional. You have a lot of lip service. People can say a lot of things, you know. I am increasingly not amused, but just I'm blown away by the ability sometimes of white people to talk. And you swear they're saying something and you feel good. And at the end of it all, nothing. I have meetings left, right, and center in my school district. I mean, when I tell you I have meetings and I have meetings. And if I don't follow up and then escalate matters up to the director's office, sometimes nothing gets done. We have meetings. When I tell you we talk, we laugh. We seem like, you know, we're all comrades, we are friends. Nothing. So all that is to say, I have put out my feelers. I've begun the conversations.
Okay.
And we'll see what happens. But the university itself, there's no interest. There's nobody doing this work at OISE in particular. So it will be difficult to get anything done through OISE. But, you know, just have to make networks and connections with other universities and other people who have an interest in mothering. But again, there's really nobody else doing Black mothering work in terms of established educators, you know, whether it's educators or academic scholars. If you Google it, you won't find a lot of Black mothering books.
And yet there are so many Black mothers.
So I am it.
Mothers who could benefit, right? So maybe this becomes a piece of non-academic writing, but, you know, let's just pray about that. Let's all pray about that. Let's all agree together that we're going to help to find a way and not just put this on the Reverend, on Dr. Jacqui Getfield.
Reverend Jacqui Getfield, no, I don't think I'm ready for that.
We're going to form a circle around this and love it into being. I want to mention, so I spoke about Funke's book. I also want to commend to people the amazing recent book by Habiba Cooper Diallo, the daughter of Afua, who has written Black in School, which basically she published her high school diary. And it's very much about her experiences as a Black student in high schools in especially Nova Scotia, but also about Afua Cooper's tremendous Black mothering. And I love that book. And I've hosted 2 events here in Windsor at which she spoke. But I think that, you know, books like this are becoming more, but they've always been important, but they're becoming more important now in terms of people's survival strategies and arming ourselves with information and arming one another with information. So I'm going to drop the book thing, but as you can see, I'm a strong advocate for publishing your work.
Well, maybe we can talk. You can help me to find channels or avenues, because I am open to it. I must tell you, I'm open. It is fresh in my head, which is a better time to do it than 5 years from now when I've moved on to something else and it's no longer as, you know, literally as fresh.
And you know, Jackie, it's just part of the clapback. You use that language, right? It's part of the clapback and just kind of documenting, chronicling, and telling and sharing these stories. The reason why there are not a lot of books is because really for so long, we really don't matter. Black women and lived experience don't matter. And this, to take it to the next level of working towards publication, that is the ultimate clapback, revolutionary clapback of building that body of knowledge and scholarship. And so that when young folks are coming through, they have something to refer to and something to source. And I think it's just something that we just, you know, we just need to start. And this is a season to start wonderful things, new things, revolutionary things, to truly clap back. So I am praying and joining the forces of heaven to manifest that you are going to publish this incredible body of work and journey. It's a 7-year long, many years journey, and we need some of those stories to live on.
Amen. We have Celia with her hand up, and then we have a comment from Cheryl, and then we're going to turn it over to celebratory remarks. So let me just read Cheryl's comment first, and then Celia, we will go straight to you. I did a class in EDI in which I had to be vocal about the fact that my lecturer's first instruction was for us to be respectful. Further into the course, I recognized that the class had created an us and them situation. It was too overwhelming for me to the point that I became vocal in expressing the fact that being respectful was meant to be a gag order, and I am not supposed to feel guilty or ashamed of expressing my authentic self in the EDI conversation. That is not meant to be a comfortable one. So Celia says, I beg to differ. As Amy Archer says, this is not sexy or attractive, but this is real. Mothers feel it in our singular experience, but your study starts to give credibility to the Black mothering experience. Once we start talking about this, having conversations and getting the right exposure. Celia, you wanted to add to that? You have your hand up.
Yes, so I guess what I'm saying is that sitting here, because I mean, I actually had intended just to come to pay my respects to my friends getting her PhD, but I actually sat here with deep interest in this topic, right? Because what it did is that for the first time, it was like a thread that kind of wove my experiences together and gave credibility to my experience, because I moved into a white neighborhood and I had some of these experiences, and I felt like, you know, it was just, you know, me being crazy or me being whatever. But then when you hear it, then you recognize that there is some credibility to what you are experiencing, and that what you're experiencing is real. And the issue is, as I was referring to when I said I beg to differ, it wasn't with the comment before, it's just the placement. I beg to differ with Jackie saying that she didn't want to do the book. But I said, as our colleague in BC mentioned, how alone she felt in her experience. What we're saying is that You don't have to depend on the university. Your whole thought, your whole study shows you that we can't depend on the system to move our idea and our experiences forward. So why would you even be depending on the university to cause you to publish a body of work that can push forward? And you don't have to publish it in a study way. You do it, yes, but do it like in a book, in with a story. And because you can find stories out of these, and you publish it as a not as a study or as a body of work or theory, something, and you go around and you get I will be your agent, Jackie. You go around and you talk about these stories, make it personal, because this is real.
My accountant.
It is real. Anyway, that was this is how passionate I feel about this, because I didn't know. I knew Jackie was doing a PhD, but I honestly didn't know what it was. One of my sons asked me today, oh, what did she do her PhD? And I said, I don't know, some social justice thing, I don't know. And here it goes.
Well, thank you, Celia. Your exuberance has brought us to the next phase of this conversation. I'm going to beg for 5 minutes of extended time so that we can complete this wonderful event. But this is the point at which we want to encourage people to share just their congratulatory remarks and their well wishes with Jackie. So if you have something you want to add to the conversation that's not necessarily in reference to her remarks today, but just to how you're feeling about this wonderful moment of achievement, this is your time to raise your hand and be heard, or to enter it in the chat. I'll start. Dr. Jacqui Getfield, you are such an inspiration. You are just such a model of determination and courage and resilience and just resourcefulness. I certainly have known many people who have completed PhDs, but the way in which you completed your PhD and the personal passion behind it and the community mindedness of your topic and the fruit that it will bear for many people who live with our identities and who are dealing with our issues and facing our challenges, that's tremendous. I'm not here to put down anybody's PhD topic. If somebody wants to do a doctorate on butterflies or on Latin, they are more than welcome to do so. But yours, I feel, will be so, so helpful to so many people. And I just want to commend you on sticking with it and getting that done. Is there anybody else who would like to make a statement for Jackie?
I will go next. I want to tell you that after I completed my MDiv 2004, my back was so broken by scholarship and by academia. And one of the feeling that I had, if anybody ever catch me going back into a school to do any further learning, they need to do something really bad to me. And so, Jackie, what I really admire is just your resilience. You've labored through extreme academia and scholarship, labored through mothering, labored through Black woman life, labored through grief and loss. And here you are, you've produced a baby that is going to bless so many people. You don't even know who is going to feed from your labor, but you know people will be fed. I was raised, I came to this country as a child, I labored through the educational system. I mean, that's 50 years ago. And so it's like, I'm sitting here going, oh my goodness, like, oh, I felt a little bit, tired. Like, this is the story. When is it going to change? But you've really given agency, right? You're just that tap that continues to drip that will definitely penetrate the foundation. It's gonna do it. And so I just want to just pour oil on your head as a blessing to say you are highly favored and you are wonderful, courageous, fearfully, marvelously, wonderfully, you know, positioned and made. And I am grateful for your courage of endurance and that through it all, you continue to be your authentic self. And what you've done is just given permission for others to just do likewise. So thank you, my dear sister. Carry on.
Amen. Is there someone else who would like to add to this conversation? While we wait, I'm going to read what Cheryl has written. I am always elated to see a Black woman sitting at the seat, fighting for equality, moreover, in the context of education. Moreover, a daughter of the soil, you are one of the persons who have reflected the other side of the single story. Amen.
I would like to add my congratulations, my personal congratulations to Jacqui, because I am sitting here and I'm feeling so proud. Proud because, as Jacqui said, we were coming from prep school together from probably 5 or 6 years old. And we actually ended up at the same high school, at Immaculate Conception High School in Jamaica. We ended up at university, though she was in a different, I think you weren't in my
I was in communications, Karamak.
Right, Karamak, yes. And then we ended up here as well in Canada, of all things, right? So I have seen Jacqui progress, and I didn't really expect anything different from Jacqui than this level of achievement that she has had. And I am not surprised that she tackled a very difficult topic that not many people find sexy or attractive. And I know of all the challenges that Jacqui had or has, and still continues to persevere and persevere for excellence. And that is the important thing that we must understand and never underestimate how much the Black mother will do for their family. We must never underestimate it. And that must be the message. And that is what you portray, Jacqui, because I remember everything. I remember everything from just when those boys were born, what you had to go through from conception of those boys right through until this.
Thank you.
That is so beautiful. I'm going to, at this point, close this event and just say that it has been such a joy to hear from.
Hello.
Oh, Sharon, you had to unmute yourself. Please go ahead.
Okay. So I just wanted to say something about Jacqui. So Jacqui, I just want to say how much I am proud of you. You are such a great friend. You are my mentor and my counselor. And I know you really love children and you have a big passion for our young Black boys who have, just a little bit of challenges with learning. But despite these challenges, we both know that they have great potential and they can be successful if they're given the right support. And I've known your situation, you have known my situation because we are in similar boats. And this work that you have completed your PhD in is groundbreaking. And I just want to say that this is the starting point for something big, something great for you. And you have my blessings. I will pray for you because it's going to be big. Thank you. And congratulations again.
In the name of Jesus. Thank you. Speak it into being. Thank you, Sharon.
And the Reverend Jacqueline says, congratulations, you have fought the good fight. You have completed the race. You have kept the faith. To God be the glory. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the Reverend Jacqueline for our closing prayer.
Okay, my dear sisters, as all sisters present here, this circle of sisters, this is a powerful space when Black women are overrepresented. Wow. This is awesome. Oh, loving God and Mother of us all, we thank you for this space. We thank you for this time. We thank you for this season, and we thank you for your beloved daughter, Jacqui. We thank you, dear God, for this time of listening, sharing, loving, and just being with each other. We thank you for those long, lonely years, those difficult years that you have carried her, your beloved daughter, through studying, mothering, laboring, and just life. We pray, dear God, for your continued blessing upon her life, upon her passion, upon her scholarship. We pray for everyone who has taken time to be here in this space and at such a time as this. As we leave this space, may we continue to feel your loving presence, and may we continue to experience your awesome power that is at work, pushing us onwards to do more than we can even ask, hope, or imagine. We pray all this in none other than in the name of Jesus, the risen Christ, who is on the move through us and in us and in spite of us. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen, amen. Please follow Black Anglicans of Canada on all of our social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, etc., as well as our website, blackanglicans.ca. Thank you to all of you for joining us, and I will let Jacqui Getfield have the last word.
I just want to ask my boys if they're still around and they have not yet gone back onto their devices. Mikhail and Joaquin, can you put your camera on so everybody can see why I do what I do?
That's your other Jacqui. Oh, that's your other camera.
Where is Mikhail and Joaquin? Are they on?
Oh, I think they go. They went. Oh yeah. Oh, they have a hand. Oh no.
No, I think they're gone.
I think they're gone, girl.
It's probably their bedtime.
No, it's not bedtime. It is about the online games. Because I said to them, you know, come and listen to this, but I think it went on a little bit longer than they would have. So I just wanted you to see why I do what I do, but they're not there. And anyway. So that's
okay.
But I thank you. As I said, I thank you. I thank you for this space. I thank you, and I welcome all my sisters walking alongside me, praying for me. Because yes, there's a lot of work to be done. When I tell you a lot of work to be done, I'm trying to discern what my next steps are, because time and space and money all come together. And of course, you have to be judicious as to how you use time and space and money. And so this is extremely important. So I welcome all the prayers, please. It is important for me to be guided by the Holy Spirit and to know that my next step is not just about career and about money, but that it is the will of God. This is what God wills for me to do. And I am very passionate about this work. And I see it as a calling. At the same time, Mikhail and Joaquin need, you know, food. and we need a shelter. And so it has to, everything has to come together. That's the point I'm making. So I thank you. I thank you all for your support, your continued support. And I really thank you for the prayer. And I thank Black for the work that it has been doing in the Anglican Church. And I thank Black for this particular event that recognizes my work and celebrates with me. Thank you very much.
we know that all will be well, but we also know that we are the hands and the feet and the spleen and the everything else, and we've got to get it done.
Yeah, seriously.
So thank you all for joining us this evening. Thank you, Dr. Jacqui Getfield. Thank you, the Reverend Jacqueline Daly and Amy Archer, for your participation in the speaking roles in this program. Thank you to all of our participants for your wonderful questions and comments. God bless you and have a wonderful evening and weekend.
And thank you, Madam Irene from Windsor. Oh, we had voices from East, West, and yeah, awesome. You're beaming, Jackie. It's awesome. Like, you know, just deliverance. It's awesome. Honestly, you're on mute.
I'm just saying, I'm happy. I'm really happy. I'm happy because of the camaraderie. I'm happy because I'm done with this PhD.
Yes.
And I'm into another space and another phase.
Freedom.
I'm just happy. I'm just happy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.